On screen, Yang Zi always smiled. Her characters were warm, resilient, and emotionally familiar, the kind of presence audiences felt safe with. For years, she appeared in hit dramas watched by millions, becoming a constant in Chinese households and a name synonymous with reliability. To viewers in the United States or Europe looking from the outside, her career seemed stable, even enviable. She worked consistently, she stayed relevant, she never vanished. In an industry known for sudden collapses, she survived. But survival does not always mean safety. Behind that carefully maintained smile was a reality shaped by constant scrutiny, public criticism, and a pressure so normalized that it rarely made headlines. Unlike stars destroyed by scandals or political missteps, Yang Zi faced something quieter and far more persistent. From an early age, she was told openly, repeatedly, and often cruelly that she was not beautiful enough, not thin enough, not refined enough to be considered a true leading star. Her face, her body, her appearance became subjects of debate in interviews, entertainment shows, and mainstream media. Every public appearance turned into an evaluation. Every close-up felt like a verdict. What made this pressure especially damaging was not its intensity, but its legitimacy. Criticism was framed as honesty. Humiliation was disguised as professionalism. The idea that she needed to improve her looks was treated as common sense rather than cruelty. And because she continued to succeed, the questioning never stopped. Each achievement was followed by the same unspoken challenge. Why is she still here? This video is not about beauty standards in isolation. It is about what prolonged psychological pressure does to a person who is never allowed to opt out. It is about how an industry can isolate someone without removing them, how survival can demand silence, and how emotional damage can accumulate without ever becoming visible enough to confront. Yang Zi was never expelled from the system. She was permitted to remain, but only under conditions that required constant self-correction and restraint. So what does it cost to stay visible when your body is treated as a flaw rather than an asset? How do you endure success when acceptance is always conditional? And why are some stars punished not for what they do, but simply for how they look? To understand her story, we must look beyond the roles she played and examine the pressure that followed her everywhere. Pressure that never screamed, never exploded, but never went away. Unlike many actresses who enter the industry as adults, Yang Zi did not choose the spotlight it surrounded her before she fully understood what it demanded. Child stardom brought early recognition, but it also erased the space where identity normally forms. Approval arrived early, and so did judgment. From the beginning, her value was measured publicly, discussed openly, and revised constantly. As she grew older, this early exposure became less of an advantage and more of a burden. She did not disappear and return with a reinvented image, as the industry often prefers. She simply grew up in front of everyone, and that continuity made her an easy target in a system obsessed with transformation. When she transitioned into adult roles, the conversation around her shifted in a way that was deeply revealing. Her acting ability was acknowledged, sometimes even praised, but it was rarely allowed to stand alone. Almost every discussion was followed by commentary about her appearance, as if talent required visual permission to exist. Media narratives increasingly framed her face and body as problems to be solved rather than neutral facts. She was compared relentlessly to other actresses who fit narrower beauty standards, and those comparisons were rarely subtle. Success did not silence criticism, it intensified it. The more visible she became, the more her looks were treated as a public debate. What made this period particularly damaging was the authority of the criticism. These were not anonymous comments buried in obscure forums. They appeared in interviews, entertainment programs, and industry discussions, delivered with confidence and normalized as professional opinion. Being told repeatedly that one is not suitable while continuing to succeed creates a specific kind of isolation. You are present but never fully accepted, recognized but never protected. Each achievement feels conditional, as though it must constantly justify itself. Faced with this environment, Yang Zi did not rebel. She adapted, she worked harder, accepted demanding schedules, and maintained a public image of gratitude and composure. There were no visible confrontations, no emotional outbursts, no public resistance. That restraint was praised as maturity and professionalism, but it also set a dangerous precedent. Silence became expected. Endurance became her defining trait. Over time, the absence of complaint was no longer seen as strength, it became an obligation. By the time she reached peak popularity, the foundation of her career had already been shaped by defensive survival rather than confidence. She was not building an image freely. She was maintaining permission to remain. Every role, every appearance, every smile carried an unspoken awareness that acceptance could be withdrawn at any moment. And in an industry where visibility depends on approval, that awareness never fades, it only deepens. As Yang Zi moved deeper into mainstream popularity, the scrutiny did not soften, it solidified. What had once been sporadic commentary became a predictable cycle. Every red carpet appearance triggered the same evaluations. Every promotional photo was dissected. Angles, lighting, weight, facial expressions, nothing escaped analysis. Over time, this scrutiny stopped feeling exceptional and started feeling procedural, as if evaluating her body had become a standard part of consuming her work. The most damaging shift was not the volume of criticism, but its normalization. Remarks about her looks were no longer framed as insults. They were presented as reasonable observations, even professional advice. Improvement was demanded constantly, yet never acknowledged as complete. Praise, when it came, carried conditions. She was commended for trying, for working hard, for getting better. Language rarely applied to actresses who naturally fit dominant beauty ideals. The implication was clear. Acceptance was temporary and revocable. Each success was followed by a reminder that she still did not fully belong. This created a psychological loop that is difficult to escape. You improve, but the standards shift. You succeed, but the criteria change. Over time, the external gaze becomes internalized. The audience no longer needs to speak. The pressure enforces itself. The industry benefited from this arrangement. Her discipline made her dependable. Her silence made her safe. She delivered ratings, emotional performances, and public composure without demanding protection in return. And because she never disrupted the system never felt compelled to defend her. She was allowed to remain visible, but always under evaluation, never fully secure. This is how isolation functions without exclusion. You are surrounded by attention, yet fundamentally alone, seen constantly, yet never truly accepted. As this pattern repeated year after year, criticism lost its shock value and gained something far more dangerous: authority. It shaped how audiences spoke about her, how media framed her, and eventually, how she likely saw herself. When judgment becomes routine, it stops being questioned. And when it stops being questioned, it becomes part of the structure itself. By this stage, the damage was no longer loud or obvious. It was quiet, cumulative, and deeply personal. The kind that does not break a career, but reshapes a life. Over time, pressure does not simply surround a person, it moves inside. For Yang Zi, the demand was no longer just to perform well on screen, but to continuously justify her presence off it. When acceptance is conditional, success loses its stabilizing effect. Achievements feel temporary. Praise feels fragile. Confidence becomes something that must be managed rather than trusted. This is how endurance quietly replaces joy. Publicly, her composure never cracked. Interviews remained careful. Answers were polite, restrained, and self-effacing. Humor often deflected discomfort. Vulnerability, when shown, was tightly edited and quickly redirected. Any sign of frustration risked being reframed as ingratitude or lack of professionalism. In an environment where emotional expression can be weaponized, silence becomes the safest language. The result is a performance that extends beyond acting, a constant calibration of tone, posture, and response. Psychological strain in this context rarely produces dramatic breakdowns. Instead, it manifests as constant vigilance. Every appearance is rehearsed mentally before it happens. Every photo is anticipated, every reaction predicted. The body becomes a site of negotiation rather than ownership. Over time, This vigilance consumes energy that would otherwise support creativity and growth. The audience sees resilience. The individual experiences exhaustion. What makes this cost particularly invisible is that it is rewarded. Discipline is praised. Emotional regulation is labeled maturity. Endurance is framed as strength. The more she absorbs without reacting, the more reliable she appears. And reliability, in this system, is currency. Yet that currency is earned by paying with one's inner life. When silence is consistently rewarded, speaking becomes risky. When restraint is normalized, boundaries erode quietly. This is the paradox of staying. Leaving would have meant disappearance. Staying required self-containment. And so she stayed working, delivering, smiling, while carrying a burden that never registered as crisis because it never disrupted output. The damage did not halt her career. It reshaped her relationship with herself. By this stage, the question was no longer whether she could handle the pressure. It was whether handling it had become the only way she was allowed to exist. At some point, the question stops being why the criticism existed and becomes why no one intervened. For Yang Zi, the absence of protection was not accidental, it was structural. In China's entertainment system, intervention is not triggered by harm, it is triggered by disruption. As long as a performer continues to deliver results, remain compliant, and avoid public conflict, the system has little incentive to acknowledge the damage being done. Silence is not oversight. It is a calculation. From an institutional perspective, her endurance was useful. She generated ratings, carried long-running projects, and maintained a cooperative public image. She did not threaten stability. She did not challenge narratives. She did not demand accountability. And because she continued to function, the pressure she endured was reframed as personal resilience rather than systemic failure. The industry could point to her ongoing success as evidence that the system worked, even as that same system allowed public humiliation to continue unchecked. Intervening would have required admitting that something was wrong not with her, but with the standards applied to her. That admission carries risk. It raises questions about beauty norms, gendered expectations, and the role of media cruelty in shaping careers. In a tightly managed environment, such questions are inconvenient. It is easier to individualize the burden than to confront the structure that produces it. And so, responsibility quietly shifted onto her shoulders alone. This is how harm becomes invisible. When suffering does not halt productivity, it is treated as irrelevant. When pressure produces results, it is justified retroactively. Over time, the absence of intervention sends a clear message. Endurance is expected, not rewarded. Support is conditional. Protection is selective. And those who survive without complaint are assumed to be fine. The most unsettling aspect is that this dynamic requires no malice. No one needs to actively decide to let someone suffer. The system simply follows incentives. Output matters, compliance matters. Emotional cost does not. As long as she remained reliable, there was no urgency to shield her from public scrutiny. In fact, doing so might have disrupted a balance that benefited everyone except the person absorbing the pressure. By this stage, the silence around her was complete. Not because her experience was unknown, but because acknowledging it served no purpose within the existing logic. And once silence becomes policy, it reinforces itself. The system does not step in because it has already decided that stepping in is unnecessary. By the time Yang Zi reached a position few could challenge, the cost of getting there had already been absorbed quietly. Her career did not stall. It advanced. Projects continued. Ratings followed. From the outside, this looked like proof that the system had been fair, that persistence and talent had prevailed. But beneath that surface lay a different truth. What sustained her success was not protection, but adaptation. Not acceptance, but self-restraint. She learned how to stay visible without demanding comfort, how to deliver without asking for care, how to smile while carrying pressure that never fully lifted. This is the kind of success that rarely inspires celebration inside the person experiencing it. When approval is conditional, relief never arrives. Each achievement feels provisional, as if it must be earned again the next day under the same scrutiny. Over time, ambition narrows. The goal is no longer growth, it is maintenance. The system rewards output, not well-being, and so survival becomes the metric of excellence. She did not break the rules. She mastered them at the cost of emotional ease. What makes this ending particularly revealing is that nothing appears broken. There is no collapse to analyze, no scandal to explain, no apology to demand. The absence of damage becomes the evidence used to deny harm. Yet this is precisely how invisible pressure operates. When endurance replaces joy, when silence substitutes for safety, success itself becomes the proof that suffering was acceptable. The system moves on satisfied, while the individual carries the residue. Her story forces a difficult question. How many careers are praised for resilience when resilience is simply the ability to endure constant judgment without complaint? In environments where beauty is currency and conformity is rewarded, those who do not fit the mold often pay in ways that never appear on balance sheets. They remain present, productive, and composed, and that composure is mistaken for consent. She was never pushed out. She was never openly attacked. She was simply shaped by years of scrutiny into someone who could survive it. On screen, the smile remained steady. Off screen, the cost was internalized. And in an industry that equates silence with professionalism, that cost is rarely counted even as it accumulates. By the end, what stands is not a story of defeat, but a warning. Success achieved without protection may look stable, but it is built on quiet endurance. And endurance, when demanded for too long, becomes the hidden price of staying visible. The story of Yang Zi does not end with collapse, redemption, or a dramatic turning point. It ends with continuation, and that is precisely what makes it unsettling. She is still here, still working, still visible, still smiling on screen. To the outside world, especially audiences far from the industry that shaped her, this looks like success, stability, proof that persistence wins. But continuation does not mean the absence of damage. Sometimes, it simply means the damage was absorbed quietly enough to never interrupt output. Her experience exposes a deeper reality about fame inside C-drama, and more broadly, about industries that reward endurance over protection. When pressure does not cause scandal, it is dismissed. When criticism does not stop production, it is normalized. And when someone survives without complaining, that survival is misread as consent. This is how psychological harm becomes invisible, not because it is small, but because it is manageable. She was never told to leave. She was never publicly shamed into disappearance. Instead, she was allowed to stay under conditions that demanded constant self-regulation. The smile became a requirement. Composure became currency. Silence became the price of remaining visible. Over time, that price stopped being questioned by the audience, by the industry, and eventually by the system itself. Her story is not unique, but it is rare in its clarity. It shows how success can coexist with isolation, how admiration can coexist with cruelty, and how a career can flourish while the person carrying it grows increasingly constrained. This is not a story about weakness. It is about what happens when strength is demanded indefinitely. On screen, she smiled. Off screen, she endured. And in an industry that confuses resilience with professionalism, that endurance is quietly celebrated, even as it extracts a cost no one wants to calculate.